For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to The Gist on Strat News Global. Good evening, I'm Surya Gangadharan, and we continue with our focus on the China Communist Party Congress, the 20th Party Congress underway in Beijing. It started on Sunday, and we are going to try and focus on the Taiwan factor. Now, it was mentioned in Xi Jinping's work report that was submitted on Sunday. And the big question mark, of course, is when does he plan to ensure the reunification of Taiwan with the mainland? Now, as always, he's played coy on deadlines and how he'll do it, but he's also underscored that he does not rule out the use of force to reunify Taiwan and bring the island under its fold. So I'm going to bring in my guest at this point, Namrata Hasija. She's with the a research fellow at the Center for China Analysis and Strategy, a think tank in Delhi. Her research has special focus on Chinese foreign policy and, of course, Taiwan, where she has lived and studied. Namrata, thank you for your time. Glad to have you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
In the context of Xi Jinping's work report and the references to Taiwan over there, what do you glean from what he has said? What is your assessment? What is it that you understand?
Thank you for the question, sir. Let me, start with the fact that, right after he mentioned a paragraph which said that the report mentioned that now Hong Kong is governed by patriots, and that is what the Communist Party has ensured. He immediately mentions Taiwan. And the first thing he addresses when he talks about Taiwan is the separatist within Taiwan and the external forces that have tried to, that are aiming to divide China, as the Communist Party would say. So these are two things that he has repeated in all the paragraphs that have Taiwan in them. That is the separatists within Taiwan, aiming, of course, at DPP, which is the ruling party at this point of time in Taiwan, and by external, forces. We all know that without naming the US, he's actually, sent a warning to the US government that. All the basically the external forces that are trying to divide China will not be, should actually stop this, because this is a warning to them that China will not take anything that comes when it, the question of its territorial integrity. Then he mentions two things. He mentions that what over the years they have done to kind of consolidate their position when it comes to Taiwan. The first he mentions in the work report is that consolidation on the one China principle by the international community, by which he means that all the countries that actually sign the allies, that the actual allies that supported Taiwan as a nation, have dropped to 13 now, and many have dropped after Tsai Ing-wen took over the reins in 2014. So these, this is something that China implies that they have done. And also whenever, they sign, we also know, we used to do, even in India, we used to do it up before 2010, that whenever we used to have a delegation from China, when we are releasing a joint report, joint statement, we always used to say that we adhere to the one China policy. So this is something that they say they have done with different countries. The second thing is that they have enhanced their strategic initiative when it comes to when it comes to Taiwan. So these are a few important things, and one important paragraph where he actually mentions that the external pressure has been a lot on China when it comes to the external landscape. They have faced blockade, they have faced blackmail, they have faced undue pressure from different countries to give in the Taiwan question. But They have stood up to it. They have resolutely shown that the Communist Party adheres to the fact that there is only one China and Taiwan is part of that. So all this is mentioned in the work report, though when he speaks, like when he was speaking, it was a abbreviated version of the work report. There he doesn't mention the 1992 consensus, which is there in the work report, but he only, kind of mentions the warning that he gives to the separatist and the external factor. So this is something, that is there. Then one line, which is a new addition this time, is that peaceful reunification is a natural choice. It is something very natural that comes in when we talk about the rejuvenation of the great Chinese nation. I think this is something that has been added this time. And the last report does not mention that they will use force when they have to reunify Taiwan. But it's not that the Chinese have not mentioned military reunification. They have mentioned, but from the major, work report, they didn't directly mention it. So, this is how Taiwan basically appears in the work report this time, along with, of course, Hong Kong and mentions of Macau.
So you mentioned pressure, Xi mentioning pressure and all that. Now, recently we had all that saber rattling and hoo-ha over Nancy Pelosi's visit. Has Xi Jinping, in a sense, lost face in that during that period when she landed in Taiwan after saying they won't be there or they may not be there, and then has he lost face?
No, sir, there was a lot of discussion, especially on the Chinese social media, like Weibo and microblogging sites. Because if you recall, there were a lot of articles, especially by these hardliners who were saying, we'll shoot down the plane that she's coming in, we will do this and we will do that. Of course, nothing happened. So there were also a discussion on the Chinese social media that why have we not taken action? And the same discussion, if we see, it's kind of linked. Even when the Galwan Valley incident happened, there were questions raised that India has declared that 20 soldiers died. How many of our soldiers died? We want to pray for our soldiers. Why have they not revealed how many of our soldiers died? Even during Doklam crisis, you see that these microblogging sites were actually discussing if our army is as strong as the Communist Party is saying, why have we done this? Why have we talked to India, and why have we decided to disengage? And if you recall, there was also a rumor that Xi Jinping has paid 20 billion US dollars to India to actually disengage, which then was refuted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, China, had to make a statement that we have not done anything like that. So of course there was a discussion in the Chinese social media that why are we not taking any action? So that kind of a discussion has been there when it comes to these 2-3 incidents in the recent past, where Xi Jinping has talked about certain things but actually not taken action.
So again, let me repeat: has he lost face or not?
So if you are talking about the discussions in public, of course we have seen many oppositions. Just before the party congress, we saw a poster right on the bridge that down with the dictator, and one of my someone I know, of course from Taiwan, happened to be there, and that person actually said that after that. There were police in civil clothes at all bridges, at all the bridges in the area and around the area. And this happened in Beijing. So yes, that is there. But the thing is that he has a strong support and he's consolidated his power within the party. So in China, that's what is very important, because people are discussing about it. But the question is that it doesn't seem the same way when we talk about his consolidation of power within the party. Of course, because we can say that most of his opponents have already been purged. So there were oppositions from academicians when zero COVID policy, when it was at its peak, when COVID was at its peak, we had academicians, we had businessmen, we had many people who were criticizing Xi Jinping, but of course all of them were taken care of, including some very prominent figures.
Mhm. Okay, so let's get back to Taiwan again. What is the assessment in Taiwan? Now, you lived and worked there, you have contacts there even today. What is the assessment in Taiwan about the date? Okay, you mentioned 2027. How could this happen? Have they kind of war gamed the scenario? I'm sure they have.
Yes, sir. They have spoken about it. There are quite a few articles, but though most of them are in the Chinese language, where the Taiwanese actually speak about what China can do. So there are a couple of scenarios that can happen. So either, mainland goes on an all-out attack. That means it has to prepare for an amphibious attack, and it needs to coordinate between its air force, ground forces, and naval forces, which the Taiwanese feel it's quite a bit complicated for them. And then they have and this all the discussion was happening when the cross-strait crisis was happening. The second option is that the mainland China, it actually captures the outlying islands. That's Matsu, Kinmen, and all these islands. And from there, then once those are captured, then it can easily blockade the strait, and that's how it will move in. And of course, the third option that they spoke about is that they are going to not let anything come in Taiwan or go out of Taiwan. So economic blockade is another option that the Chinese could try. So these were many scenarios that they actually built when the cross-strait crisis was happening. But many of them also spoke that now that Chinese have actually done these 6 live-fire drills around Taiwan, they have actually revealed a strategy as to, in case they do something, how they will do it, even if they kind of envelop Taiwan from all sides, how they are going to do it. So in a way, they have revealed their strategy when they did these live-fire drills right after Pelosi left Taiwan.
So, does Taiwan believe that the US will come to its aid? Biden has made some interesting comments, which have been refuted by his own, spokesman. What do we read into that?
See, so when it comes to Taiwan, like us, they're a democracy. So there is no one view that comes from Taiwan. Of course, the government, if you talk to government officials and if you talk to, probably MPs there, they definitely have this faith that US will intervene. But when you talk to the strategic community, they come up with a very, I would say, a wise interpretation of the whole thing. They say that there are 3 options. Either US will take up the leadership of defending Taiwan, that US will play the major role when it comes to defending Taiwan. The second they say is that Taiwan and US will form a war strategy together. So both will lead together and they will form a strategy together. The third is that what US and NATO is doing in case of Ukraine, that they are supplying arms and armaments, intelligence, and all these logistics, but not directly participating in the war. So that is the third option. But all these options, the Taiwanese say, depend on the US interest in Taiwan.
Yeah.
If they feel their interest aligned at that point of time and they feel Taiwan is important, because for them Taiwan is important when it comes to supply chains and also their own Pacific bases. If Taiwan goes, then those come under direct as to say Beijing attack. So that aligns. If all that aligns, then of course US will come to Taiwan's aid.
Interesting. Japan has said that Taiwan's defense is integral to its own security, and given every indication, they will intervene on Taiwan's behalf. Does that imply? I mean, would the Japanese have said that? I'm just speculating here. Would the Japanese have made such a comment without some American encouragement? I wonder.
Japan is, after all, US. Japan is an ally of the US.
Yeah.
And US and Japan, they came up with a statement in 2021 that in case of an attack on Taiwan, they will defend the island. Now, they did not mention how they are going to do it. They did not give the details, but they did say that they are going to, collaborate if there is any attempt on Taiwan. So, of course, Japan knows that if Taiwan goes, the next will be the East China Sea.
Yeah.
That's the next thing. So Japan also, in a way, is safeguarding their own interest. So when it comes to defending Taiwan, be it the US or be it Japan, they are safeguarding their own interest. And of course they will come in, because they will have to do that for their own interest, because South China Sea goes, Taiwan goes, then it's only the East China Sea in that region, at least.
Yeah.
I'm not counting here India. I'm counting just that side of the strait. Then they keep on going. So it is in the interest, of course, of the US, and they have made statements. Japan, in fact, made a statement today that they are doing exercises, and they'll come in they'll come and support Taiwan in case of a Chinese attack. After
Interesting. Now you mentioned India. So I have a question here from a viewer. Will India play any role along with the US and Japan if China attacks Taiwan? India should jointly work with Taiwan, Japan to counter China. Is the Indian leadership willing to do it? Given your background, your interest, and what you've been working on, what is the sense you make of this?
If the question is whether India will send its troops, put its boots on the ground for this, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Let me be very honest, because we have faced, everybody talks about Taiwan when it comes to the Chinese pressure, but we are the first ones to face it. Be it Doklam, be it the Galwan Valley, we are the ones, because everybody talks about Taiwan. Everybody talks about the Taiwan, that China is going to attack Taiwan and everything. But in the whole process, people forget that we have been at the receiving end. And what did we get? I think mere statements from a couple of countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's the US. So for me, I don't think so. Yes, if somebody asks me whether India-Taiwan relations should prosper, of course, I'm all for it. I'm an ardent advocate of India-Taiwan relations. But military help, a direct military help, to me, I don't see that from our government. Because we don't want, we are very sensitive to having a belligerent China at our border. We also have to think about ourselves, right? So I don't think the Indian government would directly participate in a war if it happens.
There is this. There is also this one China policy that we stopped reiterating some years ago.
Yes.
But we still remain committed to that. Even if we don't say it during in joint statements and all that, we still remain committed to it at a time when the Chinese don't bother at all. But a one India policy. So are we too stuck on something? Without. For what reason? It seems a little that we are not quite.
Yes, sir. I think officially we stopped using it from 2010, when we stopped using it in joint statements and everything. To me, I think just what I mentioned right now, that it's only the border, that we don't want, a belligerent China on our border, is the only reason, I think, why we are still kind of, if you can say, adhering to the one China policy. But I think every country adheres to a one China policy. Even the US does.
Yeah.
Though, of course, they find ways, because they have a special Taiwan Relation Act, which we don't have. And to us also, when we talk about one China policy in India, right from the beginning, it was more about Tibet than Taiwan.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about Formosa, like it used to be referred in the 50s and 60s, the official documents in India, most of them talk about Formosa as being an extension of the Chinese Civil War. So when we actually talk about the one China policy, it's more about Tibet rather than Taiwan. It's only, I see that question, or maybe Taiwan coming into that one China policy only in the last 10 years, when, we have started discussing about it. So, historical factor is also there when we, talk about the One China policy. And if you ask me, yes, of course, it's right now redundant because Chinese are doing what they want to do, and
Yeah.
irrespective of the fact how what India thinks about it. But I think the only reason that we are still kind of doing it is because of the huge border that we share with them, because we have seen, like we discussed, we are the first ones who have seen the incursions that are happening, and of
Yeah.
course 20 soldiers that we lost in June 2020.
Interesting point. So we have another question. Do you think after getting a third term and seeing the zero COVID impact on the economy, China will be more aggressive militarily? Um,
Okay.
what's your answer?
Um, so when the work report was being read, a lot of people, there were discussions about the zero COVID policy. It was criticized within China by many sections of the society. But during the report, Xi Jinping made it very clear they will continue with the zero COVID policy, and they have done really well with the zero COVID policy. So as far as the government policies are concerned, be it the zero COVID policy or be it any policy, even the aggression, because last time he mentioned that by 2049, China is going to be a global, power with a pioneering influence. He said that, and this time he's not mentioned 2049. Neither he has mentioned that China will be a global power with pioneering influence, but he has said that Chinese wisdom can be used, and by the middle of the century will be a global power. So he's changed the wordings, he's toned down the aggression because that actually brought him into direct conflict with the US. But
Yeah.
everything remains the same. You just have to read between the lines and what it means. So for me, when he's asking that because of the economy, there were again, like there were many people were saying that because he's having problems, he's going to probably attack Taiwan, or he's going to externalize the threat. But a lot of debate within China points out, and I'm not talking about common people here. I'm talking about the elite, the academicians, the PLA veterans, and party cadres. There's a debate even within them that how to reunify if it's Taiwan, and many of them say we are not in a position to go for a military reunification, and it's not sensible to do it because at least Swele, who's from a think tank that is supported by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so we can see that it has a lot of influence. He says that the political condition right now, the domestic political condition in China, especially Xi Jinping, will not want to destabilize it. And what Xi Jinping also has to think, what if he doesn't have a quick victory? That will, be the end of it. So he has to think about that. And only when he's sure about a quick victory, a decisive victory, will he actually go in for a military action. So whatever the aggression, whatever the rhetoric is in his speech, we also have to understand that he'll factor in everything. The day he realizes the US is not going to intervene, or Japan is not really a matter, at least when it
It's not
comes
a threat. Yeah.
it's not a threat, it's the US. The day he realizes that the US will not intervene, it doesn't matter whether it's 2027, 2025, or any date. That's the day when he'll actually decide to, use military. So for me, he's practical, even though, whatever aggression we see in his speeches, he's a practical person. He'll also think about the repercussions.
And there would be consensus within the party on whatever strategy he adopts.
There are no options, it's his men. So what he says will happen. I don't think so right now. Anyone is in a position to actually kind of say no to the boss. So I feel that yes, if he decides, everybody will support, because you would have seen that when he talked about Taiwan, and when he said that if the peaceful reunification not works, we'll use force. There was applause, and quite a huge applause that you can make with the sound that it was louder than because they keep clapping when he says something, but this applause was louder than the other applauses.
Mhm. Mhm. So, my last question: the U.S. recently came out with a national security strategy where China is mentioned as the main competitor and all that. So, when the U.S. strategy is looking at the current decade, uh, some of the reports I read say that they're looking at the demographics in China and how that is going to impact on the economy, its military posture, and so on and so forth. So, is there some truth in that also? I mean, you mentioned 2027, as a probable date when he could decide to move in on Taiwan. Would those issues be also working on his mind?
Right now, of course, China is facing a lot of issues. Unemployment is at an all-time high. We have, if you read the Chinese language material, and especially if you read between the lines, they're facing shortage of food. At least they predict that they're going to face a shortage
Mm.
of food because they have come up with many policies how to save food, and they started talking about food security. So that is also one of the problems that they are facing. The economy, of course, is facing a lot of problem other than the unemployment thing. So because China is facing a lot of, and so that is why Xi Jinping is facing.
I think we lost Namrata there. Let's just hang on and see if we can bring her back. Let's just wait a minute and see if she can come back. Hang on.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I
Namrata, we got lost. Let's quickly,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
so there are issues that are going to factor in. So that is why, when I spoke about Sway Lei and when he was talking about a military reunification, he said that Xi Jinping needs to account the domestic factors as well. And here, of
Mm.
course, economy, the demographics, the one-child policy, the way it has, kind of, that is one of the reasons why they are facing this demographic dividend. All this will definitely factor in, and
Mm.
that is the reason why at least Xi Jinping, other than the US, because I feel it's the US which is the biggest factor here, rather than other things that we are talking about. But these factors do come in, because he also has to, of course, we know he is not a democratically elected leader, but then he also needs to justify certain promises that he has done, not only
Yeah.
not to the common people, but to the party itself. When he took over, there
Mm.
were, because I don't think here, at least for certain things, the common people matter. But when it comes to the party itself, the way he's projected himself, the cult that has been built around him, he needs to justify that. So I
Mm.
think all these factors somehow will be there at the back of his mind when he plans anything, big with
Mm.
Taiwan.
Great conversation with you, Namrata. I think the formal announcement of his third term will be out by the end of this week.
Yes,
And
yes,
then we'll have to see what next after that. So interesting
yes.
times we live in, and we'll keep up this conversation at some other time too. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Namrata. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
And for those of you who joined us on this conversation, thank you for those questions. Keep visiting our website. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Sorry for the little interruption at the end. These things happen here. And hopefully, we'll be able to stabilize things as we go forward. Do subscribe to us, to our YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. Thank you and good night.